Hello, and welcome to Taken by Your Word, Marketing Communications in a Multicultural, Multilingual World. I'm Dale Kirshner, Editor-in-Chief of Twin Cities Business. I'm here to introduce today's presenters and to moderate a Q&A session that will take place following their remarks. Taken by Your Word is being presented by TripleInk's Christa Tiefenbacher-Hudson and Sandra Gengler. As co-founder and managing director of TripleInk, Christa's responsibilities include general business management and development, as well as strategic planning and the direction of multicultural marketing projects. Christa holds a master's degree in history, literature, and linguistics from the University of Stuttgart. A native of Germany, she moved to Minneapolis in 1982 and has worked in the field of international communications ever since. Additionally, in March 2010, Christa was appointed to the post of Honorary Consul of the Federal Republic of Germany in Minneapolis. Sandra is TripleInk's Director of Client Services. As in that position, she leads the firm's global and ethnic transcreation projects and consults with TripleInk clients on the development of multicultural marketing communication and branding strategies. Born and raised in Ancona, Italy, Sandra received an MBA in Marketing and International Business from Indiana University's Kelley School of Business. Prior to joining TripleInk in 1996, Sandra held positions in marketing and branding at Miller Brewing Company and Oscar Mayer. Christa and Sandra, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you.
This is such a timely, important subject to discuss. Christa, can you start us off?
I'll be glad to do that. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar today. Sandra and I have been in the business of marketing, communication, and translation for many years, and we have seen firsthand that in today's global marketplace, the risk for miscommunication across languages is as great as the potential for profit. Therefore, we want to present to you some best practices for minimizing this risk of miscommunication in order to maximize your global profit opportunities. And those global economic opportunities are enormous despite the current slowdown. For example, in the past 2 years, the economic potential using online communication alone has risen from $36 trillion to over $44 trillion. But only a third of that total potential can be addressed in English. If this picture makes you hungry, feel free to have your lunch while we share some of our knowledge of how to reach customers who do not speak English, whether they live in Minnesota or Milan or Mumbai. You will learn not to make the same mistake as the McDonald's franchisees here in St. Paul, Minnesota, who put up this billboard to attract members of the large Hmong community in our area to their restaurants for breakfast. As a U.S. marketer, reaching out to new immigrant communities in their language is a smart way to gain incremental market share. Even if your audience speaks some English, being addressed in their native language engages your audience at a deeper level and generates feelings of goodwill towards your brand. But you have to do it right. And this billboard gets it all wrong. Ignoring the fact that coffee may not be the first choice for a breakfast beverage for Hmong customers, the English headline, "Coffee gets you up, breakfast gets you going," was translated literally and then typeset as one string of letters as if there were no individual words in the Hmong language. Nobody approved the in-language copy and nobody proofread the type and layout. The result was an incomprehensible gobbledygook that left the audience utterly confused. Clearly, confusion is the last thing you should create in your advertising. So what we want you to take away from our presentation today is a better understanding of how you can communicate effectively with culturally diverse and international audiences, how you can use an efficient centralized communications model to develop successful global communication strategies, and how you can manage your multilingual content and turn it into a valuable marketing asset. Let's first review the opportunities and challenges you face as a marketer today. Minnesota and the nation have a new focus on exports. Demand for U.S. products and services continues to grow in international markets. Marketing to ethnic audiences also offers incremental growth opportunities in the domestic market. In this marketing environment, developing a loyal customer base for your corporate or product brand requires a globally appealing value proposition. And doing business with international and U.S. ethnic audiences requires that you communicate in languages other than English. Largely driven by the internet and digital media, the amount of communications content that requires translation is growing exponentially. This poses a real challenge for marketing and technical communications managers. Translation can no longer be an afterthought. It has to be an integral part of your overall communications management. In fact, managing your brand's in-language communications should be a strategic rather than a production consideration. Your customers will take you by your word, and if those words and messages do not align with your strategic objectives, or worse, if they are not meaningful and persuasive to your customers, you have wasted an opportunity to increase your revenue and maybe damaged your brand in the process. According to Common Sense Advisory, the leading research company for the localization industry, language is one of the defining factors of the customer experience. Why should I buy your product if I don't understand its benefits? Why should I give you money if you don't tell me how to conduct the purchase transaction? Why should I even consider your brand if you cannot communicate its value in my language? As a marketer, you can take different approaches to international marketing and advertising. Here are some of your basic options. Essentially, there are three models for managing international advertising and marketing communications. First one is the decentralized model, and it is for those companies and brands that do best if they can completely tailor their messaging to local markets, and they have the budget to hire separate marketing teams and agencies in each of those markets. The second model is the democratic model. It relies on a shared communications platform or strategic brief, but gives much freedom and money to in-country teams to execute different campaigns against the platform. The third is the centralized model. It is based on one global strategy and develops one campaign that is then executed in the different markets and regions with some adjustments to meet local requirements. Our clients typically use the centralized model, and with good reason. It has some key advantages: consistency in the brand voice while speaking to local audiences, greater efficiency, and cost savings. The decision to use this centralized model is often driven by the company's corporate structure, but today's mobile consumers and the globalization of the media and the internet also add to the difficulty of sustaining different brand positionings and different messaging for your brands in different markets. Such a centralized strategy certainly is a viable option if there are enough commonalities among the different audiences. The key idea of your communication strategy resonates with all of your audiences, and there is flexibility to adapt to local requirements. So first we wanted to look at the audiences. Who are we talking to? Is there such a thing as a universal consumer? The majority of our clients market to international business audiences, so they usually segment their customers by profession or corporate affiliations. Those of our clients who market to U.S. consumer audiences will also segment by race and ethnicity, age and gender, social and economic status, geographic location, etc. These are demographic criteria that are fairly easy to analyze. And there are other sophisticated models to develop profiles of your most promising and influential customers. But in addition to all these criteria, when it comes to international and ethnic audiences, you will always have to consider two more: culture and language. As you create your global customer profile, you may assign similar demographic and behavioral characteristics, but for each market, you will have to consider how the different cultural context may influence those characteristics, and how the fact that those customers speak a different language may change the way they receive and respond to your messages. So first, let's take a look at culture. What is culture? I assume that all of you have traveled to other countries and experienced other cultures firsthand. The first thing you may notice is the different architecture, people wearing different clothes, eating different food, speaking a different language. These are the explicit expressions of a culture that you can observe, taste, hear. But culture goes deeper than this. It shapes who we are and defines how we act as human beings. There are shared implicit norms and values that organize the social interaction and the belief systems of a cultural group, which may not be as obvious to an outsider. A simple example. In an American business environment, the norm is that people address each other by their first name, and the conversational tone is more casual. In Germany, and most other European countries, people address each other by their last name, and they use a more formal language. There is a greater distinction between familiar personal relationships and official business relationships. A lack or poor understanding of such norms could make you or your brand sound disrespectful or out of place and prevent you from really connecting with the market you wish to develop. You can also discern the values of different cultural groups. Research companies like Gengler examine the values of different populations on a regular basis and offer national and regional comparisons of how shared social values like family security, happiness, friendship, or individual values like being honest, responsible, broad-minded, etc., rank among different cultures. Such findings are extremely helpful when you want to understand how the values associated with your brand resonate with your different audiences. In case you're wondering what a hippo has to do with all this, we think it is a great metaphor for what culture is. Just like we only see the top of the head of the hippo, the cute little ears, we may only see the explicit expressions of a culture. Like the hippo's body, the implicit norms, values, and basic orientations that shape people's behavior and attitudes are hidden beneath the water, like the collective subconscious. Not understanding these hidden dimensions can be dangerous for a marketer. And this is true even when you market to international business audiences, like engineers or medical professionals. They may all be doctors, but first and foremost, they are French or German or Japanese. Your messages and creative presentation will be filtered through the prism of their culture, which may alter both their perception and their response. Nevertheless, at this deepest level of culture, you can find universal truths about human behavior and human aspirations that are shared by people from different cultural groups. Finding these significant truths and themes and finding a creative expression that is most appropriate for your different markets offers the best prospect for success for an international or multicultural campaign. Advertising is very much about understanding culture and influencing behavior and cultural trends. To accomplish this, advertising mostly uses language to express its compelling messages, which brings us to the other main differentiator: the language of your audiences. Culture and language are inseparably linked. It's a chicken and egg thing. You can't access a culture except through its language, but you can't access its language except through its culture. That's why it's so important for people who are engaged in international business to learn other languages. It gives you much greater insight into what motivates your international business partners or customers and how they think. And it gives you a greater appreciation of the challenge of translating ideas from one language to another. You obviously can't learn all the languages of all the countries you're doing business with, and you may never reach the language competence of a native speaker. But you can always engage an interpreter or translator. And when it comes to your advertising and marketing materials, you hire a professional agency that knows how to best translate them for you. The fact is, if you want to sell your products, you have to communicate in the language of your customers. Language is one of the defining factors of the customer experience, and it is a crucial enabler of enhanced international revenue. But as we've seen with the Hmong billboard, you have to craft in-language messages that are meaningful, culturally relevant, and resonate with your customers. They will take you by your word. A simple translation may simply not do, and a bad translation will only do damage. There are over 6,000 languages spoken around the world. But don't worry, you don't have to speak them all. The choice of languages is obviously determined by the markets you want to do business in. However, if you are marketing your company or products online, you may need more languages right from the start. This table shows that you can connect with 80% of the total online population by speaking one of these 12 languages. By their sheer numbers, Chinese and English are the dominant languages. However, the table on the next slide shows you a picture that may be more relevant when you are making business decisions. This table shows you the importance of languages by the economic opportunity they represent. The economic potential is shown in red, the online population in blue. The ranking of the languages has changed according to their economic status. English is first, followed by Japanese and German. Chinese is now on 6th place, and Indonesian, with its millions of speakers, is off the chart entirely and has been replaced by Dutch. You can only reach about 1/3 of the economic potential with English-only content. The economic pie is growing, and the English slice of the pie is getting proportionally smaller each year, while the share of these other mega languages is growing. Now, these statistics apply to online commercial activity, but they also give you an indication of the importance of these mega languages in general economic terms. If the potential for profit is why you may want to communicate with your customers in their language, Sandra will now take a closer look at the how.
Thank you, Christa. While the how is all about your messaging and creative strategy, before you can communicate with your customers, you first need to find out what their language or language preference is. In relationship marketing, as shown in this Hyatt Hotel loyalty program example here, knowing the language preference of your customers makes them feel like you know them and you care about them. A French or Japanese customer who receives his monthly statement or new offers in his or her language develops a greater sense of loyalty to the brand. In this example, the design, content, and messaging is the same for all communication materials because the profile of the affluent international traveler is very similar across markets. And the heroes of the advertising are the hotel properties themselves. Still, the languages have to be fine-tuned to achieve the right tone and style and reflect the norms that govern communications in different cultures. This one is a campaign for Angioceal Evolution, a hemostatic device from St. Jude Medical used to close puncture sites following diagnostic or interventional procedures. Target audience are cardiologists and medical staff in the Americas and Europe. The key idea is that this device, which is named Evolution, actually represents a revolutionary development in vascular closure. The creative concept is based on an English language wordplay involving the product's name, which is a very risky approach for an international campaign. The design transforms the English word evolution into the word revolutionary. Both words have Latin roots and can also be found in other European languages, but with some spelling variations. This means that the product name and the ideas of evolution and revolutionary do not align as naturally as they do in English. And this weakens the key idea and message. Had this been a global campaign and included languages that did not share the Latin roots or use different scripts like Chinese or Arabic, the treatment of the words would simply have become a design element, and no meaningful connection to the product or key message would have been made. In general, a strictly language-based approach works, as long as the underlying idea is viable. It can be expressed in other languages. However, if the words are tied to a specific visual, as may be the case when you use metaphors or to other non-variable elements like the product name, it may be impossible to find a meaningful and impactful expression in other languages. So this is a cautionary tale with a quasi-happy ending, but it reinforces the need for involving a multilingual team when you develop creative concepts for an international campaign. Creative expressions obviously are not limited to words. So here is another cautionary note regarding the design and the use of visual elements. We all know the saying, pictures can be worth 1,000 words. For us, this means ensuring that our audiences not only are familiar with the visual cultural icons we use in our marketing material and advertising, but that they also share the same meaning. This is an example of how not to reach multicultural audiences. This Citibank wealth management campaign was developed by a U.S. agency for U.S. audiences. The agency was hoping to extend the campaign to wealthy Chinese Americans by translating the headlines to Chinese. While the translator message was clear, the image of the Easter Bunny and its implied connection with eggs and nest eggs was completely lost on this audience, who wonder what an oversized pink creature had to do with their retirement savings. This is one of the biggest challenges for creative teams. Art directors, designers are all steeped into their own cultures and are masters at using their own culture's iconography. They are certainly aware that icons, symbols, gestures, and even colors can have an intrinsic meaning, but they cannot know how this meaning changes or it is lost altogether in different cultural contexts. And there is not one single book or one single resource that captures all the possible variables of all the cultures around the world. Because the variables are so great, we strongly recommend engaging multicultural panels to assess and identify possible hidden meanings of design elements for global campaigns. And this should be done before everyone has fallen in love with the creative idea. So let's summarize our consideration on culture and language. Effective advertising aligns the cultural values of your audience with your messaging and communicates in the language of your audience. While the design should be consistent with brand guidelines, the visual appeal of the design elements, color choices, images, and iconography needs to have cultural relevance. If it's done right, it works. This example, it's a bilingual English and Spanish direct mail campaign for U.S. Bank that was highly persuasive because it made an emotional connection with the Hispanic audiences while addressing the different levels of acculturation and language fluency that exist today with Latinos in this country. The response rate was an astounding 3.6%, which means that 3.6% of the recipients opened a checking account at U.S. Bank. Now let's see how these basic insights translate into broader strategic considerations.
Thank you, Sandra. Clearly, there is no one-size-fits-all strategy for global marketing, communications, and advertising. The decision what strategy to pursue is driven by external market factors as much as by internal factors. In a global campaign, the brand is the constant. All other factors are more or less variable. Your audiences, the market regulatory environment, the competitive set, etc. Your company's corporate structure and the markets you serve may enable you to take a more centralized approach. And this is the approach we are focusing on. And as we've said earlier, a centralized strategy is a viable option if there are enough commonalities among the different audiences, the key idea resonates with all of your audiences, and there is flexibility to adapt to local requirements. If this scenario fits your company or product, a successful approach to developing and executing a global marketing and advertising campaign is what we call smart centralization. And this includes the following recommendations. The number one recommendation is don't go it alone. Assemble a multinational, multicultural, multilingual team for the development and execution. If your advertising agency does not have international capabilities, you should bring an agency like ours onto the team to provide feedback on the multicultural viability of creative strategies before you commit to a concept. Also, solicit the input of key international stakeholders within your company or within your trusted customer base to uncover possible pitfalls early in the process and ensure future buy-in of your campaign. The second recommendation is find a key campaign idea that reflects a universal truth. The third recommendation is identify those advertising and design components that must remain true to the brand and those that need to be sensitive to the culture of the market. The look and identity of the brand, logo, colors, typeface, photographic style, etc., should adhere to your international brand guidelines. However, the verbal expressions have to resonate with the culture of your customers. This means no matter how clever the English copy is, the translators and the transcreation writers need an appropriate amount of freedom of expression to render the copy in the local languages. Also, the visual expressions and images need to convey the desired association or idea across all markets. And the final recommendation, balance your need for central control with a degree of local freedom to ensure both efficiency and effectiveness. Now, Sandra will take a look at 2 examples of a successful global and multicultural campaign.
Conceptual creativity is very important for global advertising. And this campaign is based on the robust value proposition that private banking with Citigroup elevates the customer to the rare and commanding heights where service has no limits. The target audience are high wealth individuals. Although they are from different countries around the world, they share many of the same attributes. The imagery clearly expresses the key idea, and the language here is straightforward and simple. In the mountain ad, the English would say, "Where would you like it moved?" The moon ad says, "Don't hesitate to reach for it." And the pyramid, "Let's say you need a dozen more." The look and feel of the campaign conforms to Citigroup's international brand guidelines. And we were able to adapt the headlines and copy without deviating significantly from the English source text. Nevertheless, the in-language ads were reviewed and approved by the client's in-country marketing teams to ensure that their local preferences were being considered. Something a little bit more difficult now. This campaign was for ATT Services, which originally was conceived for general market audiences, was adapted to reach a number of ethnic audiences in the United States to launch their high-speed internet service that would connect them to their friends and family all around the world. While the campaign could have easily been done in English only, it was running in the U.S. after all, the company chose to reach their current and potential customers by advertising in their native languages. The key idea was based on the insight that all humans have a powerful need to connect with others. The creative was simple and very visual. But simple doesn't mean easy, as the McDonald's billboard example we showed you earlier can attest. To be as impactful as the English, the execution had to be flawless. To achieve this, our designers worked closely with our language teams, and we were able to create a universal campaign with the same look and feel across 8 different languages, 4 of which you can see right here. At the same time, the different audiences were each given the impression that the ad spoke specifically to them. The ads were placed in local in-language publications, and on billboards in specific ethnic neighborhoods. So this is a good segue to the topic of media. Today, we have the entire range of media at our disposal in practically all markets. Traditional media like print and broadcast are available in all markets, but you also have to buy them by market and by media outlet. The new media offer truly global possibilities for reaching your audiences, and you can do this almost from the comforts of your own U.S. office. The new media also offers enormous opportunities for personalizing your message and communicating to individual consumers. Social media plays an ever-increasing role in engaging the consumer and opening a dialogue with your brand. But you can guess what I'm about to say next. You can only engage in a dialogue with your customer if you speak their language. Over the past years, the largest and fastest increase of content that requires translation is online media content. The number of languages supported by the website of global companies continue to grow. This is the area where we start to see more and more automated translations tools like Google Translate, for instance, in particular for user-generated content. Some form of automation may be suitable for user-generated content, but we believe the companies must control their branded in-language content, where close enough will not do. And this brings us to our last chapter, the practical implications for managing your multilingual content.
It's my turn again. So how do you manage all that multilingual content? Just to summarize what Sandra just said, with the shift towards digitized media, the amount of content that is being created is enormous. Some of the content will never be translated. Other content is translated by automated systems or crowdsourced. As a marketer, you need to take control of the content that is critical to your brand in digitized and traditional media. This includes messages and content that define your brand and content that supports the customer experience and other high-value interactions. We've been talking mostly about advertising, but of course that is just the tip of the communications pyramid. Your messaging ladders down to your product brochures and sales promotion materials, your press releases, your education and training materials for customers and for sales teams alike, and of course to your website. Then there is your packaging and labeling, warranty statements, technical documentation, user manuals, and so forth. All this content has to be produced in your market languages in a way that supports your communication and branding strategy. It's a task that all companies who do international business have faced, so you can compare some of the best practices and find an approach that best fits your situation. So let's take a look. First of all, in order to generate profits from your international or U.S. ethnic business, you will have to make an investment. Global competitiveness requires adequate budgets for translation and for creation of in-language content. According to Common Sense Advisory, Fortune 500 companies continue to invest in translation, and about 60% have increased their translation budget over the past years and also produced materials in more languages. Depending on their size and marketing structures, companies take different approaches to managing translations and multilingual content. So one of your options is you can hire a dedicated translation or localization manager who coordinates translations with outside vendors, so-called language service providers or LSPs. And this is the most centralized approach and may give you the most control over your in-language content, especially if you and or the LSP are also investing in translation management tools, and we'll talk about those shortly. The other option is you can let individual departments or business units manage translations directly with LSPs. This may be a good approach if you need close collaboration between the marketing team and the LSP to develop effective in-language communication strategies, as long as the in-language content is captured in a central translation memory. Some companies have also invested in in-house translation resources, but usually those in-house translators handle primarily technical documentation. When it comes to the use of tools, some companies use tools like a content management system for content creation, but not all such systems have multilingual capabilities. The most important thing is that you take a systematic, planned approach to managing your in-language assets. On your road to global success, always remember our first rule: don't go it alone. So, in one way or another, you will have to work with a language services provider to translate and manage your in-language content. These LSPs come in all sizes, from individual freelance translators to small agencies to large multinational LSPs with hundreds of employees. In the US, agencies typically have account managers, project and technology managers in-house and contract with freelance translators for the actual language work. Their use of technology ranges from translation memories to very sophisticated translation management systems to automated machine translation. A translation management system enables the LSP to create and manage translation memories that allow you to leverage previously translated content. Next to a content management system, this is the most important tool for managing your language assets. When it comes to global marketing communications, we strongly encourage you to partner with a language services agency that can be a strategic resource, not simply a production service. The right agency will work with you to adapt your creative and message strategy in a way that ensures the effectiveness of your marketing materials. And get your agency involved early in the development process, when there is still time to make any necessary course correction. So here are our key takeaways for today's webinar. Make your foreign language communication an integral part of your overall communication strategy. Your customers will take you by your word, so you need to choose your language carefully. Involve your multilingual, multicultural communication partner in the development of your creative and messaging strategy. And treat your in-language content as an asset and manage it accordingly. Remember, reaching more customers with the right messaging in more languages will lead to more revenue. It's that simple.
Christa and Sandra, thank you for your talk today. And We have a few questions that have come in. I'm also inviting everybody on the line to also submit questions if you have any that you'd like to type into the box in the lower right corner. We'll see them here and get in as many questions and answers as we can with the time left today. One of the questions that came in is, how do you deal with product naming and branding for global markets?
That's a good question. And we actually had to cut this topic out of today's presentation because it almost is a presentation in itself. The short answer would be, when you're launching a new product and you know that it will be marketed internationally, you should assemble a multinational team for developing the brand positioning and defining the brand personality. This will add more perspectives to your brainstorming sessions and broaden your horizon right from the start. And then you definitely want to engage a multilingual team to evaluate the names you are considering for the new product. You may even engage such a team in the name ideation because it will yield many more options than just working with a monolingual English naming team.
Great, thanks. Another question that we have is, let me see if I can read this. We're a mid-sized company and our advertising agency does not have international capabilities, and we can't really afford one that does. How can we make sure our marketing materials are suitable for international markets?
Well, there are many different ways of attacking this, but basically working, as we mentioned before, your primary agency typically doesn't have to have an international team. But we certainly are available, or people like ourselves, and so we always encourage everyone to really check what they're doing, check that English U.S. concept early, because and let us become your international team basically for you. This will avoid a lot of problems down the road when maybe that concept cannot be translated or adapted very easily. So we understand that, yes, not everybody has that very large capability, but there certainly are ways to deal with that.
Great, thank you. Another question that has come in is, for a small growing division expanding overseas that has limited resources, what are the musts that it should consider?
I think it's a little bit like a combination of the two questions we had earlier. I think because you have a smaller or resources, you partner with multicultural or multilingual agency like ours, and that allows you to combine the best of your U.S. domestic agency resources with a virtual global team that you can access on an as-needed basis. And I think then, as you're developing your branding strategies in collaboration, issues that may not be of critical for the U.S. market will arise during those brand development sessions, as long as you have international team members that can contribute, and you can, in the end, come up with a broad canvas of ideas that can be executed in different markets. Typically, I think you still want to have a kind of an umbrella campaign that drives the overall communications messages, and then adjust to the local markets as needed. Again, by bringing in people who can help you develop these in language messages, you can operate very efficiently, even if you don't work with a multinational advertising agency.
Kind of gets back to the centralized approach, too.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Another question that came in is a good one, and it's our management here tells me that English is the language of global business. American exceptionalism or truth?
Well, this always makes me chuckle a little bit. Yes, English is I would say, the default language of global business as you travel around the world, but I don't know if you've ever really tested how deep the knowledge of English is with people around the world. I mean, some understand it only superficially. Other people have a pretty deep understanding. Now, one thing is to shake hands and say something nice, meet with someone across the table. Another is to convince a consumer to shell out money, or even another business to shell out money for products they don't truly understand. I mean, think about it. If it's technical, they need to really get it. If it's a consumer, more consumer product, they need to figure out where this product fits in their lifestyle, where it fits in their general, in their general needs. So yes, English is out there. English is very prevalent, but I would not chuck it to let's just speak English and everybody will understand each other very well. So again, I think in order to really reach consumers and move them in a meaningful way, you really need to talk to them in their own language.
Great, thank you. And a very intriguing question just came in, and it says that we are using key opinion leaders as consultants in specific markets to share technical information and have noticed that certain nationalities are better received than others. An example that this person found would be the U.S. and China. Do you agree with this? And how do we optimize this?
That's not something we have come across. Typically, what our clients do is they select a key opinion leader for each market, and that will be their spokesperson, if you will, a respected German cardiologist, for example, for the German market, certainly a Chinese expert for the Chinese market. Depending, I think, on what industry you're in, you may find that there is an international community of experts in those industries that are recognized across markets. But I think that I've never heard that there is a specific nationality that would be more respected than another.
My only example, I don't know if the person asking this question intended it this way, but there are countries, kind of like brands, countries that are better known for certain products, marketing certain products. So we do know that there is the highly technical products that come from the U.S. or maybe Japan are considered better, for good or for worse. And maybe you have, if you've got cheeses, maybe you would think that France has the upper hand on that. So, there are countries that maybe are known for what they do, for what they produce, and so they become the leaders in that industry. Otherwise, I don't know. I'm not really sure if this was the intention.
Okay, well, thank you. And then we have time for one more question here, and this one is, nobody at our U.S. company speaks a foreign language. How can we tell that the translations are done correctly if we can't understand them?
Oh, that's right. And you can't. No, first of all all of what Christa was talking about, the LSPs, I mean, if you're a respectable LSP, you will follow a process. So there are processes that translation companies will follow, and they will give you, by virtue of following these processes, assurance that things are done correctly. Now, there are certifications at the end. It can go into the mix if it's necessary for certain industries or whatnot. But of course, the process or the accuracy is not the full picture here, because when you're dealing with advertising rather than technical translation, you're dealing with something a little bit more subjective. And so that's when, in cooperation with a good LSP, a good agency, you then may want to throw the material back to your in-country subsidiaries or distributors or people that can understand the product very well as the language, and kind of give you some feedback on that and work in tandem so that in the end they like what they see. It's the kind of material that they want to use for selling or for whatever the purpose is, and you feel more ensured that what has been done is right.
Great. Well, that's all the time we have today. Christa and Sandra, thank you once again, and for everybody at TripleInk for all the insight that you've been able to bring to this topic today. We really appreciate it. If those listening would like more information or have additional questions, you can see the email links on the slide on the screen and also the phone number at the bottom of the screen. So with that, thank you everybody for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.